April 14th, 2025, everything you knew about America has changed. And I'm going to be real with you. If Congress doesn't act immediately, then the military must. Here's where we are. America has sent an innocent man. Quite frankly, we have sent hundreds of innocent men to a death prison in the Central American country of El Salvador without trial, evidence, or due process. But the administration has admitted that this one specific man, Kilmar Abrego Garcia, should not have been deported, that he was a legal resident and an innocent man, and they had made a mistake. The United States Supreme Court agreed, and they unanimously ruled that Mr. Garcia should immediately be returned to our country, and our government has decided to reject their decision. This is clear and obvious proof that our president is now lawless, and we are no longer functioning under the rule of law. Donald Trump just held a press conference in the Oval Office with the president of El Salvador. And when he was asked about Kilmar Abrego Garcia, he deferred the question to Pam Bondi, the Attorney General of the United States, who proceeded to blatantly lie to the press, claiming the man was a gang member, which he is not, was in the country illegally, which he was not, and then claimed that the U.S. had no authority to get him back despite the Supreme Court ruling because it was now an international issue, which is a blatant lie. To be clear, the Trump administration made a deal with El Salvador. We are paying their country with taxpayer money to take innocent people who have been denied their rights and given no trial into captivity with no chance of relief. It is an agreement we set up, not something that's just happening in a foreign nation. It's something that we are paying for. We are kidnapping people off our streets, human trafficking them to another nation, and paying to keep them in a concentration camp. That is what America is doing. How that's even allowed is an excellent question because that is not how deportation works. No trial, no proof, no paper trail, and these people aren't being returned to their home nations. They're being sent to a foreign one to be tortured and brutalized forever. Who agreed to that? Then the press turned their attention to the president of El Salvador, and they said, okay, if it's an international issue, are you going to return the innocent man that was mistakenly sent to a prison camp in your country? And he also said no. He said, why would he smuggle a terrorist into our nation? Who is the terrorist in this scenario? Kilmar Abrego Garcia is a legal American resident, a father, a husband, an American Union member. No one's asking anyone to smuggle. Our Supreme Court is telling you to put him on a plane, but he still said no. So what does this mean? Well, it means America is now lawless. It means the American president, if no one does anything, can label anyone a terrorist, and that person can be kidnapped and sent to a death camp in a foreign country without trial. Trump has already admitted he won't be stopping at foreign-born legal residents. In fact, our president was caught on a hot mic after the press conference asking the El Salvadorian president to build more prisons so we could house homegrowns, meaning U.S. citizens he believes are criminals or a threat to his regime. But if an innocent father working as a union apprentice is a terrorist, what's a politician who speaks against him? A journalist who prints something he doesn't like? A citizen who criticizes his policies? We just watched the president of a country known for human rights violations tell the American president that to liberate his 350 million people, he's going to have to imprison some. And our president and our vice president and our attorney general agreed. So I need you to understand that if the American president can just claim a national emergency and disappear people without due process, there's not a single person in this country who is safe. Our Constitution is null and void, and fascism is here. Now I'm going to be calling Congress to insist they act, because this is an impeachable offense and Donald Trump should be impeached and removed from office. But since I have very little faith in Congress, I am also going to speak to our veteran friends and active duty military so they understand exactly what's happening here and they can get right with the oath they took to protect the Constitution of the United States and the freedom it affords its citizens against enemies both foreign and domestic. This is the moment, America. What we do now will resonate through the ages. Is this who we are? Is this what we allow? Will we continue to just put our heads down and hope for the best, or do we stand up and get loud and collectively reject this sickness, this criminal, lawless administration? Because this is no longer about politics. It is about identity and morality and justice. So pick a side. Are we a democracy or are we a dictatorship?
You know what? I just want to start out by apologizing. I sincerely want to apologize, but honestly, if I've got to listen to these morons, then frankly, I feel like spreading the love around. None of what she said is accurate at all. It's all complete and total lies. It actually, it hurts the brain. It hurts the brain. Listen to her shrill voice. Listen to her. Listen to the arrogance. She's going to talk to the military. Basically, what she's advocating is a military takeover of our country, right? Despite her facts being completely inaccurate. And by the way, no. We are not a democracy. We've never been a democracy. Democracy doesn't say democracy anywhere in the United States Constitution. Do you know what democracy is? Democracy is the rule of the masses over the rule of the individual. The reason why the Constitution is such a beautiful document, the reason why the Constitution is such an amazing piece, excuse me, I'm going to shift over, amazing piece of political paperwork, unlike anything that has ever existed, is because it limits government. It isn't a list of rights. It is a limitation on government. We are a democratic republic. We elect people through the democratic process, but we fall under a republic, the Constitution. We are not in the middle of a constitutional crisis, not in any way, shape, or form. Every single thing Donald Trump has done, Mr. President has done, has been completely and utterly legal. So I wanted to open up this podcast. I wanted to show you, I want to outline the type of people that I'm running into every single day on the internet, off the internet. It's almost like they're carbon copies of the same freaking person, and it's really weird. It's really weird. It's like nobody can freaking think for themselves anymore, and it's driving me absolutely batty. And it's always these old people. I mean, look at her. She's late 40s, right? It's always these old people, and it's not always, but it's mostly females. It's mostly females, but it's not all females. Let's be real. There are a lot of men who are acting exactly like this, acting like little liberal girls who are whiny because they don't get their way, because they have to live in a republic with more people than just them who have different opinions. The left is the most intolerant side. It's filled with the most intolerant people. I want you to try something, all right? Well, all right, it's a little difficult to do now, but I want you to wear apparel. I want you to, let's say you go to an anti-Elon Musk rally, and if you wore a Donald Trump shirt, they would practically lynch you. They would talk shit. Excuse me. They would talk smack. They would bombard you with anger and hate. Anytime you go to any one of these liberal rallies, you can see the hatred. You can feel the hatred, right? Now I want you to do the same thing on the other side. I want you to go to some kind of pro Elon Musk rally. I want you to go to some kind of pro Donald Trump rally and wear a pro Biden shirt. Wear a white dudes for Harris. You're not going to get lynched. You might get made fun of. You'll find people who might talk shit. Maybe. You're probably going to get, most likely you're going to get a lot of, oh, really? Oh, you're like that. Okay, I mean, whatever floats your boat. Because one of the cornerstones of conservatism is thinking for yourself. I mean, it's the conserving of traditional values, and one of those values is the right to free speech and the right to individuality. The reason why the Republic is so, that's where I was going with that. The reason why the Republic is so instrumental in how our Republic is formed is because the Constitution, what it does is it guards against the tyranny against the most delicate of minorities. There is a minority in this country that most people don't even think about, and I belong to that minority. There is a minority that the Constitution specifically protects. And do you know what minority that is? The individual. The individual, the person who thinks for themselves. That's why the government can't do anything about your speech. That's why the government can't take your guns. That's why the government can't look at your ID without due process. That's why they can't come into your house and quarter soldiers. This whole document, the Bill of Rights, the Constitution, protects the individual. But we've got these people, we've got a good percentage of this entire population, I'd say a good 20 to 30% that have absolutely lost their freaking mind. That wouldn't know the Constitution if it fell out of the sky, landed in their face, and started to wiggle. I mean, I'm being completely honest. All right. And on one hand, I would like to say that it is completely their fault, that we are filled with a bunch of stupid people. All right. I'd like to say that. I would. And, we got a lot of stupid people. But it's not all their fault. Okay. You got to have a certain amount of compassion. Oh. I'm just thinking about her voice. Compassion for that voice. You got to have compassion for these people, all right? This political girl and all these others who are it's racing in their mind. Okay? Because I'm going to bring some receipts here. But our mainstream media, they bring the fear like it's friggin' pornography. Okay? It's news porn. Fear porn. It's something on that level. Or is it fear corn? Excuse me. We can't say that word you can't say that on YouTube. It's fear, and they pump it. They pump it. And there is a whole segment of this population that eats this stuff up like it's a breakfast cereal and it's good for your digestion or something. They eat it up and they lap it up and they want to spread it. They spread the fear. But ladies and gentlemen, I have some fantastic news for you. There is nothing to fear. There is nothing at all to fear. The only thing to fear, well, of course, there's nothing to fear but fear itself. But the only thing to fear, really, honestly, in today and age, is these unhinged liberals. They have been attacking. Anyways, I'm going off on a tangent. So the reason why we have to have compassion for these clearly psychotic people, okay, is because this fear porn is getting pumped in 24/7 on all of these news stations. And if you notice, it's a lot of these old people because they are attached. They're still attached to the mainstream media. They haven't. It's like this last election was a freaking IQ test and they all failed. These last 4 years were an IQ test. If you got the jab, you failed the IQ test. If you think for a second that Joe Biden had any even say in his own cabinet, if you even remotely think that Kamala Harris had our border closed, if you've believed any of these lies that the mainstream media has been pushing, you're failing the test, guys. You're failing. That's why I say that the Constitution protects the greatest minority in the entire world. There's no greater minority than the individual, the person who thinks for themselves. There's no greater minority. Everybody else, I swear, is just, they're sheep. They're sheep. And I understand it because this whole world's like a giant weird ass psychedelic dream. It's like God took a bunch of psychedelics and popped out people. But there are a whole bunch of people who think if you follow the mainstream narrative, you follow the mainstream and like a good little boy, that you are always in the right. These are the same people that mask. These are the same people who jab. The good news is the jab is poison. Oh, that is really mean to say. But the good news is the jab is poison, and a lot of these people won't be around in the next few years. I mean, that's really jacked up to say. But frankly, if you failed that IQ test and you got that jab and you're following lockstep, these people, if you've noticed, they you just look in their eyes and they look dead. Anyways, this fear porn is getting pumped in. And that's what's going on around this whole situation with Kilmar Abrego Garcia. Okay. So this is actually what she's kind of talking about. All right. So let's get on to the actual situation here. Okay. So we have an individual, an MS-13 gang member terrorist. He's been labeled a terrorist because MS-13 has been labeled a terrorist group, and he's been associated with MS-13. I mean, that's just cut and dry. All right. But you know what? I think I'm getting ahead of myself. Let's get on with the show.
The reality is this wasn't a Maryland father. This was a El Salvadorian man who was illegally in this country, who was affiliated with MS-13.
There is no evidence to that.
Let's set the record straight about who this person is.
There's no evidence that he was a gang member.
With all due respect, if the Department of Justice has come out and said that he has gang affiliations, just like the same man who killed Rachel Morin had gang affiliations. So you would have told me before Rachel Morin's death, you would have defended that man and said he had no gang affiliations, and he went on to kill Rachel Morin. So instead of defending this gentleman, talk about who he actually is, and talk about the risk in keeping illegal criminals in this country. This is exactly what President Trump was elected to do, to return these people back to their home countries, and that's what he did.
We're not defending him. I'm going to reiterate that is unsubstantiated. There is no evidence of him being a gang member. He is married to a U.S. citizen, and he was in this country legally. Okay, but we don't know if he was
Being
actually...
married does not make you not a gang member.
There's no evidence. We're going to move on. There's no evidence that he was a gang member, and I want to reiterate that to our viewers.
The Department of Justice came out and said there was credible evidence that he was a member or affiliated with MS-13.
You said he's a gang member, and he wasn't legally allowed to be here, which, again, he was legally allowed to be here. And he is married to an American citizen.
You can hold court for him all you want. He's no longer in this country.
All right.
One person, the Americans are safer because of it.
And to go back to the original question, so right now the White House seems to be doing nothing about getting him back, and that's fine. I'm going to move on.
He's an illegal immigrant. He was here illegally with deportation orders in 2019. What part of that do you not understand?
I understand the story very well, and I'm going to stop going back and forth with you on this, but I will say, again, he had every right to be in this country. Is there any scenario under which
this guy... He was an illegal immigrant.
We're going to move on this.
No, I will not let you go forward.
Okay.
He was an illegal alien in this country with a deportation order in 2019. He is an El Salvadorian citizen. If you are not a citizen of the United States of America here illegally, there are grounds to deport you, in which happened recently.
Again, unsubstantiated. Those are not the facts, but I will move on.
You can't give these libtards an inch. Bravo on that individual for stating out the facts, for being articulate and stating his case. And just look. All right. Let's look at what just happened. All right. This journalist, they have decided that all of their facts are completely correct, and that for some reason, everything coming out of the Justice Department is a complete lie. This all stems from the whole media narrative that the only thing that President Trump says are lies. But the fact is if you really look from front to back, from beginning to end. Mr. President has never lied to us. Donald Trump hasn't lied to us at all. You may not understand what he says because he's so flamboyant and he's so boisterous and he's so over the top. All right? I'm not going to say that he's not a little over the top and likes to talk smack and, but, and sometimes he even talks in a little bit of riddles. But I don't recall a single lie. I recall the mainstream media saying he was lying. I do remember that. I remember when they were eating the dogs and the cats, something really stupid and small, that they were pushing back. But no, Haitians, they eat dogs and cats. I was in Japan, and I accidentally ate dog. It was pretty good, to be honest. It was an accident. Like, how do you, listen, all right, a little off topic. I was a young Marine, 2:00 in the morning, drunk like we do, coming back. I saw the biggest chicken leg that I'd ever seen. I was starving. I bought that, and I ate it all the way back to the base until I hit the front gate, and that's when the front gate informed me that chickens don't actually grow that big. And of course, I was too drunk to think about it, but I was drunk and hungry. But just that, every single thing that President Trump has said has been correct. You can go all the way back to when he was talking about how the whole Biden and Ukraine situation and when he was trying to get quote unquote info on Joe Biden and how that whole thing played out, and it turns out that they were committing massive, massive fraud, and that his son should not have been, like, somehow he's an expert on oil and gas, but he's not. Okay? The Russia. Like, there are still liberals, okay, who believe Russia, all right? Believe in the whole Russia narrative. And it's because of what we just saw. These activist, these activist reporters. Yeah. These activist reporters who think they know better than you, and they actively change their narrative. They lie. And I'll be honest, man. It's since Doge has started uncovering all of the fraud, and since we've been paying for publicity. We've been paying like all of the news agencies. They've been getting public funds. All these agencies that are talking smack about President Trump, that are talking smack about the American people, that are foisting these horrific opinions on us. USAID has been PBS. What was that other one? That other one that was getting paid. It doesn't matter. They're all getting paid. And then you go back to the CIA operation where they put CIA operatives in for journalism, to be journalists. Okay. So in my opinion, I think as soon as we can prove all of this, and I think it's coming down to the wire, it's still going to take a minute because all of these cases are extremely complicated. But as soon as these cases are proven and they can start bringing them to court, I can almost guarantee you that these reporters, they're going to jail for treason. Guess what? If you take American money and then you betray the American people, that's called treason. That's called treason. And as you can see, they push back. Now, had that man been from the Biden administration, do you think she would have acted like that? Do you think she would have that's just you're just wrong. No, oh, you're just wrong. She was acting like a friggin' child. The DOJ, he spits facts. He tells her the Department of Justice has shown proof, has come out and said that there's ample proof that he's an MS-13 gang member. It's in court filings as far back as 2016. So, but according to her, that doesn't exist. But if it was the Biden administration who said something like that, do you think she would have acted like that? I'm going to tell you right now. Or excuse me, the Harris administration, if she would have won. Do you think they would be acting like that? Do you think our entire media, the media that last 4 years that practically freaking bent over backwards for the last administration, just totally on the knob of the entire last administration. Oh, Joe Biden is the best he's ever been, and screw you if you don't believe it, because that's the facts. They still got their job. These morons who completely betrayed the American people on national TV. There's still video of it. They can't get rid of all of it. These morons, they still have their job. And on one hand, I love calling them morons. I love calling them stupid. I love calling them all those, because it feels so good. But the fact is it's treason. The fact is they've turned on the American people, and the vast majority of the American public finally realizes it. We had to go through the last 4 years so that people can look at that last clip of that out-of-line journalist who's completely denying reality and see it for what it is. It's liars being liars.
The reality is this
include an existing deportation order believes that he has an affiliation with MS-13. As I said, there's no version of this man's life where he comes back. And let me say one more thing. The people that want him brought back need to understand something. If the president of El Salvador releases him, and we do facilitate his return, when he lands in this country, one of two things will happen. He will be arrested, and then he'll either be sent back to El Salvador, where he is now, or some other country that I promise you don't want to go to. He's not going to be allowed to come back and live in this country as though he is a U.S. citizen.
That's literally the definition of tyranny, right? So here's what's going to happen. We're going to throw him in jail. No, there's a thing called the rule of law and due process, which has not been followed in this case. And if I have a slightly optimistic take on this, I actually think this is going to come back to bite the Trump administration, because what's going to happen is the next time this goes up the court system, they have absolutely zero credibility to say, don't worry, you can file a habeas petition, you can get your person back. The courts are not going to allow this to happen. And the idea that the Trump administration has the right of fiat to just decide to ship somebody off to another country, that is fundamentally opposed to everything a constitutional democracy
they have the ability to deport people who have deportation orders. Do they not? He got due process. He has a deportation order.
But then why didn't they make that argument?
Withholding of his removal order. So he was in the country.
Why did he have a withholding?
Because an immigration judge ruled that.
But why? What was the argument? Because he was fearful of a gang that hasn't existed in El Salvador for 4 years. There's more of that gang in Los Angeles than there is in El Salvador.
That's not for us to decide. That's the immigration judge who decides that.
Can I just tell everyone something right now?
Tyranny. Tyranny. Hey, I want you to go and tell the Uyghurs in China who are currently in concentration camps that we suffer from tyranny, that President Trump is a tyrannical dictator. I want you to tell them that. I want you to tell the political opponents of the Russian Vladimir Putin that we, Donald Trump, and in America suffer under tyranny. Let's go to North Korea. Hey, North Korea, you think you got it bad? We've got Donald Trump. I mean, I get it. You guys barely have power, and you apparently 1 + 1 is a greater 1. But North Korea, no, you don't know what fascism is. You don't know what tyranny is. And he has a deportation order. He's had a deportation order. All right. It is. I have to laugh, because if I don't laugh, I'm going to get extremely angry and scream, because these people are extremely disingenuous. They're lying. They're shifting the goalposts, trying to find those loopholes and be like, ha 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 ha, I told you so. Unbelievable.
You were all asking a lot of questions about this, and you all seem to care about it a lot. So let's see if any of you have researched anything about this issue at all. Can anyone here tell me what would happen to the illegal alien from El Salvador if he came back to the United States? Does anyone here know? Does anyone want to guess? Any of you?
He could be with his family.
Does any of you know the answer to the question? Legally, what would happen if he came back here? Does any of you know? Any of you? Guys, do you know the difference between a deportation order and a withholding order? Do you know the difference? Any of you? Please. Do you?
Well, we're not in the government.
But you couldn't even spend 72 hours over the weekend learning the distinction, even though you've been writing and talking about it this whole time.
Steven, we're not going anywhere. On the gold cards.
Just raise your hand. Does any of you know the difference between a deportation order and a withholding order? Do you dispute that he's an illegal alien?
No.
Okay. And do you dispute that as an illegal alien, we have the right to deport him?
He's going through the process.
He went through the legal process. So I want to be very... what I'm getting from this conversation, which is educational for me, is that not one person in the media knows the difference between a deportation order and a withholding order. Is that a fair statement? You're learning about this all for the first time right now? I guess so. Okay. So the deportation order means the judge has said he must be deported from the country. He has no right to remain here any longer. He must be removed from the country. So his only options are to be deported to his home country or another country. That's it. There's no other option. He doesn't get to stay here. He doesn't get to live here. He has no future here. He has no right to be here. He's an illegal alien. So when you keep saying return, because you've been spun up by the open borders advocates, you all seem to be operating under the illusion that he would be able to come to the United States and just continue to live here illegally. That's not an option available to him. His only choices in life are to live in El Salvador or to live in another country.
Yeah, it's not possible. It's absolutely not possible. Okay, so when all of these libtards, okay, all of these people screaming constitutional crisis and all of that stuff, all right, and that they're not following the court order is complete bullshit. Complete bullshit. Okay, he had an order for deportation, but then he had a withholding order. That doesn't mean he was here in any way, shape, or form legally. He did not have a protected status. He was still an illegal alien who was told that he had to be deported, but he wasn't supposed to go back to El Salvador. Oops. That's his home country. I mean, we could have sent him to Nigeria. I mean, where else can we send him? We can't really send him anywhere else other than his own home country, because who's going to take him? Hey, Mexico. I've got an MS-13 terrorist for you. Huh? Hey, Canada. Can we deport all of our MS-13 gang members to you, Canada? Huh? Can we? Please? Because I know a lot of Canadians like to talk smack about how we're all mean and angry and evil. So this is what we can do. We can send them all to Canada. How does that sound? Where could we have sent him? Because we should not be keeping him. And this is the situation. This fear porn. They try. They're freaking lying. Okay, they're just lying. I remember seeing this video about this man made a very, very interesting observation when they were setting up a camera, doing a video of like an interview, and he says, he's like, somebody walked through their shot, and he's like, oh, can you believe they did that? And he said, don't attribute malice to what can be easily attributed to incompetence. Most of us are in our own heads, and we're not even really paying attention to others. So that's how I like to live my life. I try to give everybody that I can the benefit of the doubt. I don't think you're particularly lying or evil. You're filled with hate porn. Hate corn. Hate corn. But I don't think I'd have to say that there's a good percentage of the 30% brainwashed in this country, like the total loony lefties, right? The communists. Let's rip that Band-Aid off. I'm tired of the lefty loony. They're communists, but they're brainwashed. They're so off the edge. They're brainwashed, and a lot of it comes directly from what you just saw. Directly from what you just saw is because they'll say he was here legally, he's got a family, he's got kids. Yeah. We all got family. We all got kids. That's life. So the Trump administration is facilitating his return. What does facilitating mean? We'll give you a ride, but you can't order the president. What? Oh, and I also wanted to go back to another kidnapping. Somebody said kidnapping people. Arresting and deporting has become kidnapping. Let's listen to the language they use. It's all hyperbolic. It's all verbose. Just like those words, they're way too big. It's all bullshit. It's all fear porn. It's all, when in reality, there's absolutely nothing to fear. It's insane. So Trump is following the law. All right. President Trump will facilitate the bringing him back. But once he gets back, what is going to happen? If he had come back, if he does come back, which he won't, the president isn't going to fold to any of this. But if he came back, like you heard, what would happen? He would either get sent right back to the same place he's from, or we'd send him somewhere else. And like I said, there are a lot worse places than your own home country. So let's continue.
Let's hear the question from this very low-rated anchor at CB.
Thank you, President. Do you plan to ask President Bukele to help return the man who your administration says was mistakenly deported? The man who was mistakenly deported to El Salvador?
Well, let me ask Pam, would you answer that question?
Sure, President. First and foremost, he was illegally in our country. He had been illegally in our country. And in 2019, two courts, an immigration court and an appellate immigration court, ruled that he was a member of MS-13 and he was illegally in our country. Right now, it was additional paperwork had needed to be done. That's up to El Salvador if they want to return him. That's not up to us. The Supreme Court ruled, President, that if, as El Salvador wants to return him, this is international matters, foreign affairs, if they wanted to return him, we would facilitate it, meaning provide a plane.
So will you return him?
And you are doing a great job. Thank you.
Thank you.
Stephen Miller, wait a minute. Can you just also respond to that question? Because, it's asked by CNN, and they always ask it with a slant, because they're totally slanted because they don't know what's happening. That's why nobody's watching them. But would you answer that question also, please?
Yes, gladly. So, as Pam mentioned, there's an illegal alien from El Salvador. So, with respect to you, he's a citizen of El Salvador. So, it's very arrogant even for American media to suggest that we would even tell El Salvador how to handle their own citizens as a starting point. As two immigration courts found that he was a member of MS-13. When President Trump declared MS-13 to be a foreign terrorist organization, that meant that he was no longer eligible under federal law, which I'm sure you know, you're very familiar with the INA, that he was no longer eligible for any form of immigration relief in the United States. So he had a deportation order that was valid, which meant that under our law, he's not even allowed to be present in the United States and had to be returned because of the foreign terrorist designation. This issue was then, by a district court judge, completely inverted, and a district court judge tried to tell the administration that they had to kidnap a citizen of El Salvador and fly him back here. That issue was raised to the Supreme Court, and the Supreme Court said the district court order was unlawful, and its main components were reversed 9-0 unanimously, stating clearly that neither Secretary of State nor the President could be compelled by anybody to forcibly retrieve a citizen of El Salvador from El Salvador, who again is a member of MS-13, which, as I'm sure you understand, rapes little girls, murders women, murders children, is engaged in the most barbaric activities in the world, and I can promise you, if he was your neighbor, you would move right away.
So you don't plan to ask for anyone to get him back?
And what was the ruling in the Supreme Court, Steve? Was it 9-0?
Yes, it was a 9-0
in our favor.
In our favor, against the district court ruling, saying that no district court has the power to compel the foreign policy function of the United States. As Pam said, the ruling solely stated that if this individual, at El Salvador's sole discretion, was sent back to our country, that we could deport him a second time.
Well,
no version of this legally ends up with him ever living here because he is a citizen of El Salvador. That is the president of El Salvador. Your questions about it, per the court, can only be directed to him.
I asked President Bukele,
what is
can President Bukele weigh in on this? Do you plan to return him?
Well, I'm supposed to not suggesting that I smuggle a terrorist into the United States, right?
It's always
how can I smuggle? How can I return him to the United States? Like I smuggle him into the United States, or what do I do? Of course, I'm not going to do it. It's like, the question is preposterous. How can I smuggle a terrorist into the United States? I don't have the power to return him to the United States.
But you can release him inside El Salvador.
Yeah, but I'm not releasing. I mean, we're not very fond of releasing terrorists into our country. I mean, we just turned the murder capital of the world into the safest country of the Western Hemisphere, and you want us to go back into the releasing criminals so we can go back to being the murder capital of the world? No, that's not going to happen.
They'd love to have a criminal, released into
I mean, there's a fascination.
They would love it.
Yeah.
They're sick. These are sick people. Marco, do you have something to say about
Yeah, I mean, Stephen outlined it. I don't understand what the confusion is. This individual is a citizen of El Salvador. He was illegally in the United States and was returned to his country. That's where you deport people, back to their country of origin, except for Venezuela that wasn't refusing to take people back, or places like that. I can tell you this, Mr. President, no, the foreign policy of the United States is conducted by the President of the United States, not by a court. And no court in the United States has a right to conduct the foreign policy of the United States. It's that simple. End of story.
And that's what the Supreme Court held, by the way, to Marco's point. The Supreme Court said exactly what Marco said, that no court has the authority to compel the foreign policy function of the United States. We won a case 9-0, and people like CNN are portraying it as a loss, as usual, because they want foreign terrorists in the country who kidnap women and children. But President Trump, his policy is foreign terrorists that are here illegally get expelled from the country, which, by the way, is a 90-10 issue.
Nike 10 issue. I have no idea what he means by that, unless he means, some kind of sweatshop for little children. I have no idea. But so here it is, as laid out, the full story. Since 2016, Kilmar Abrego Garcia has had a deportation order. That deportation order has been kicked down the can because of a withholding order. But that withholding order doesn't state that he's supposed to stay here. None of the orders state that he's supposed to be here in any way, shape, or form. So he was deported. He has been declared a terrorist like the rest of MS-13. And it would be interesting if, like, right now, out of the blue, he was just declared a terrorist. But it's on his documents. It's in the courts. He has been declared, and that's why he was given a deportation order to begin with. These are we're dealing with liars. We're dealing with deceptive people, really disturbing, who want to bring gang members and murderers into our country. I honestly don't understand this. So there it is. It wasn't a mistake. It was completely on purpose. And guess what? And you just heard from the El Salvadorian president. Okay, that dude looks gangster. I'll be real. He looks gangster, right? What is he gonna do? He's gonna say, "All right, Mr. President, I'm gonna kick him back to your country just to take him back in a day or two." I mean, what is he gonna say? What if he even said that he's not gonna let Kilmar Abrego Garcia out even in that country because they recognize that he is a terrorist. Just because, well, I mean, he does have a criminal record in our country, but a lot of these people have criminal records in other countries. So that is literally the state of the situation. And all we have are, okay, so let's talk about the loony left and their response to this entire situation, like I just showed you at the beginning. But it gets worse, okay? All right, so apparently, Senator Chris Van Hollen of, Massachusetts or something, from where he was deported from. All right, I don't have the information in front of me, but Senator Chris Van Hollen has decided that he wants to talk to the President Bukele personally. All right, and I caught this post. Senator Chris Van Hollen requested a meeting with President Bukele this week to talk about Kilmar Abrego Garcia's return while Bukele is in the United States. If Kilmar is not home by midweek, I plan to travel to El Salvador this week to check on his condition and discuss his relief. So these people, okay, these senators, these Democrats, this is what they think. They're more worried about the illegal than their own citizen. He wants to go down to El Salvador and make sure that a terrorist gang member is okay. The rest of the post is interesting considering SCOTUS ruled that federal courts have no actual authority to direct the executive branch to conduct foreign relations in a particular way. Could you imagine if the courts could force the President of the United States into foreign actions? I mean, that would be insane. We certainly wouldn't be a republic. We wouldn't be a democracy. We would be a banana republic. Like, I think they can do stuff like that in like Cuba and China and stuff like that, right? Why does Senator Van Hollen want to bring back an illegal alien MS-13 gang member from El Salvador to Maryland? Does he not even care about his own constituents in Maryland? Does he? I don't see any evidence. All the evidence I see is to the contrary. And this is his letter. Dear Ambassador Mayorga, I write to urgently request a meeting with President Bukele during his current visit to the United States, blah, 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 blah. This is the type of BS. The United States court ruled unanimously that Mr. Abrego Garcia was wrongfully deported to prison in El Salvador. That did not happen. He's lying. That didn't happen, as I just showed you. That didn't happen at all. So he's lying. On Saturday evening, in a court filing to a federal judge in Maryland, the Trump administration confirmed that Kilmar Abrego Garcia is being held in El Salvador's terrorism confinement center according to Michael G. Kozak, a senior official in the United States State Department Bureau of Western Hemisphere Affairs. However, they did not detail steps that have been taken to facilitate his return, as mandated by the Supreme Court, which was never mandated. It was never mandated. It was never, ever, ever, ever mandated. Yeah, this is the type of bullshit that they pump. That's why people like this political girl and all these others, they have this belief, because all these politicians and the Democrats and the media, they're pumping lies. And to me, this is treason. This is just straight up treason. I have met with Mr. Abrego Garcia's wife, mother, and brother, and as you can imagine, they are extremely worried about his health, safety, and continued illegal confinement, as I am. I look forward to your response. Sincerely, hugs and kisses. Grace Van Walden.
In today's Capitol Close-Up, we welcome Maryland's Democratic Senator Chris Van Hollen to discuss the latest developments regarding Kilmar Abrego Garcia, the Maryland man wrongfully deported to El Salvador. Senator, it's always a pleasure. Thanks so much for joining us today.
Steve, good to be with you.
So a lot to get through, obviously, in a short amount of time, but let's focus right now on Kilmar Abrego Garcia. I know you reached out to the embassy here in D.C., the embassy of El Salvador, to try to request a meeting with the president of El Salvador while he is in D.C., meeting with President Trump. Have you had any success?
I've not. I reached out to request that meeting to talk about the, as you say, illegal detention of Abrego Garcia. We've not heard back from the president at this point in time.
You also mentioned if you didn't hear back, then you'd be willing to go to El Salvador. Is that still the case?
Go to El Salvador, please. Pretty please. Pretty please. Could you imagine? Could you imagine? You know, it'd be hilarious. He gets stuck there. They don't let him out. Go.
Yes, it is, Steve. I'll be going later this week. If he's not released, we still hope that he will be released. But I think it's important that we go to El Salvador to show his family, his wife, his mother, his brother, his kids, that we're not giving up on this, because, as you indicated, the Trump administration has admitted that this was done in error. And you can't just send somebody off to a notorious prison in El Salvador and say
it was not an error. And look at all these videos with his family and him. You know, all you need is a Sarah McLachlan song in the back. In the arms of an angel. Cry me a friggin' river.
Whoops, that was a mistake. And that's why the Supreme Court, by a 9-0 ruling, said that the Trump administration had to facilitate his return.
So a couple of things. One, to your last point of sending someone to this notorious prison, is it more of an argument in your favor that this is someone who was not necessarily deported, but deported to the prison? How much of an impact does the prison make as opposed to someone being deported to El Salvador?
Well, both. I mean, he was here under protective status, and this is why the court, both the federal district court and the Supreme Court, determined that he can't just be essentially abducted from the country, that he gets his due process rights.
Abducted from protected status. None of that is true.
That's a fundamental value that we have in this country. That's why the courts have been unanimous in their rulings here.
So now there's this legal limbo that Kilmar Abrego Garcia is in. The president of the United States is saying he can't do anything about it. It's up to the president of El Salvador. The president of El Salvador said yesterday at the White House he can't do anything about it. He doesn't want
That's all I'm saying, right? So I'm going to spare you the rest of that video because, frankly, it's pretty infuriating. So now the Dems have talking points. Their talking points are that Trump is ignoring the deportation order, which he's not. If the El Salvador president wants to give him back, I'm sure Trump will lend him a plane. And then the second, they want to hold members of Trump's administration in contempt of court. That's hilarious. That is absolutely hilarious.
To intensify the pressure on the Trump administration to comply with the Supreme Court's directive, and the Supreme Court and or the federal district court actually needs to enforce its order. And the vehicles that are available for the court to do that relate to contempt. And that contempt can be directed at a variety of different members of the Trump administration, including but not limited to the Secretary of State and or his or her designees, and the Secretary of Homeland Security and or his or her designees for the court to determine.
It sounds like you're saying you think the court should hold some members of the administration in contempt. Anyone else you want to mention there?
Well, I think what the court needs to do is to set a deadline as it relates to compliance with the quasi-directive that came down from the Supreme Court related to returning Mr. Garcia. Specify that and then make sure that it happens. And at the same period of time, I think, as you've seen, and there's been some great leadership from Senator Chris Van Hollen, who apparently indicated earlier today that either his constituent is returned or he plans to go to El Salvador himself. And that's exactly the type of action that, as members of Congress, we can do to highlight the injustice, dramatize and amplify it, and force the administration to comply, which in this instance, I believe we will make sure happens.
Yeah, so you've seen that and you heard that, right? So I guess basically the overall message of this entire situation: never back down. No more backing down. You can't give them an inch. They lie consistently, and the people that argue against them are arguing based off of lies that are being perpetuated in the mainstream media. Don't back down. Don't give an inch. President Trump is absolutely right. Well, thank you for joining me, everybody. And again, like, share, subscribe, and I'll see you on the next video. Peace.